Hello, girls and boys. Alto Wisdom speaking. At last, today we'll cover to some extent my upcoming plugin VST, the GridFather. I've already set up some of the things. I won't cover today the installation or setup part. I'll be providing a user manual for that. Which will describe how to set up in the various DAWs. Up to now, it's been tested successfully against Logic, Reaper, Cubase, and Cakewalk to some extent as well. And there are still some DAWs in which I'm still struggling, and because the DAWs don't provide all the features necessary to run it properly, namely live, because you can't output to several MIDI channels. So it's not a big deal because under live you have already the AutoGrid-MIDI edition, which covers pretty well what the GridFather does. And the last one, which I'm not sure about, is 3D Loops FL Studio, as we name it now. In which I only can do one single channel patterns, and I think that's a limitation there as well. There might be some other DAWs. I haven't tested them all, but it's probably worth giving a try when I put my hands on some of them. So today I'll mainly run against Logic Pro, because that's the DAW I'm mostly using apart from live. So I know it pretty well, so it's going to be a bit better for me, a bit easier. So here's the project I've set up. As usual. It's not a big stuff, just some groove going, just to have something to rely on. So we have a kick with its click, hi-hat, we have a bass line, we have some hats going on, and this is pretty much it. The BPM is 140. It's quite slow, but so that's okay for now. So let's just listen at what it does without the GridFather. All right, nothing fancy. So now what do we have here? So we have a sum, which is basically a folder, which is the name, tracking summing track, which is the name of the folders inside Logic. It's just optional stuff, but it's pretty convenient because you can close that and open it as long as you want. So it's pretty easy. We have the GridFather, which is set up here, and it's going out to an external track. It's going to an external instrument. It's pretty much the same in every DAW. You get the MIDI out of your DAW to the IAC bus if you're running macOS, or Loop MIDI if you're running on Windows. Apart from Bitwig, which I forgot to mention, Bitwig has quite extensive internal routing capabilities, so it's working without having that stuff, and I think Cakewalk as well doesn't need that. So basically I'm putting all the MIDI information which is generated by the GridFather outside to this IAC bus number 1. All the MIDI channels are concerned, because we'll see that I'm covering several channels at the same time from the GridFather. And then I've set up the instruments that I'm going to be using today. So we have a few instances of various patches from Serum mainly, just for the sake of simplicity. You'll forgive me about the sounds themselves, because they're pretty much what I've found. I didn't spend too much time looking for interesting sounds, but they fit quite well in this example. So we have 8 instruments, and as you see here, the CH1, CH2 means that each of these instruments is actually listening only to one channel. So this one is listening to MIDI channel 1, 2nd, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 instruments, each one having its own channel. The reason of that is GridFather can be used like my autoplay as a single device, single instrument software. I mean, if you're just relying on one channel. But one of the strengths of it is that you can also use it to generate automatic grid patterns which covers several instruments at the same time. So each of the instruments will not play as long as the other are playing, some others playing. So we'll see that a bit later. So how do we do that? So I got GridFather. Let's open it and activate it. So maybe we'll listen. We'll have a listen at the sounds. So this is. Pretty interesting sounds, whatever, and but of course you don't want to have all these sounds, all these instruments playing at the same time, because we'll just it would be a mess inside your project. So what I'll be doing with the GridFather is making sure that I'm sending notes to one of these tracks at the same time, so we won't have two of these tracks playing at the same time. So let's cover a bit with the user interface of the GridFather. We have basically 4 sections. The first one is the step sequencer itself. It's very similar to autoplay. We have a global speed or length multiplier, so we can slow down the whole device. Check out if you're using, I'll come back to that later, but if you're using the phrase length, this multiplier also has an impact on the phrase length. So if you diminish, if you slow down the whole device, this one will also be slowed down. So whatever figures you read there, they will be multiplied by this value. But it's just I'll cover that a bit later. And then we have 4 different speeds that we can choose. It's a bit different to autoplay, because in autoplay you just can select the base speed and the probabilities, and then you have, for example, 1/16, 1/8, 1/8, 1/4, and 1 second. So they are going from one to the other with multiplied by 2. Here you can pretty much select what you want. So from 1/30 second to 1/2, including the dotted values. So you can have dotted values playing as well. What I haven't put here is the triplets. So because it really has an impact on quite a lot of things to use triplets. I know that some of you have been requesting this both for autoplay and autogrid, but it's pretty hard to do that, and it would probably need to have a request to have a different software just for the triplets, a variant of the software just for triplets, because it's pretty different. Whatever. All right then. So we're pretty much ready to go. Okay, so how does this section work? So we have the speed length multiplier, and then you select 4 different speed, 4 different steps length, and probably for a chance, we'll say, for each of these. So for example, here the only setup was 116, 100%, and 1/8, 48%. So this is 0 and 0, so it won't be used today. This has an impact on the chance that a given speed will play. So this has twice as many chances to play than this one. This is quite simple. The next section, and so the GridFather will generate notes with these time values. Next, we have the modulation and probability stuff. So we have here the play probability for each step, whether it be 1/16, 1/8, or whatever. It's going to be a chance. There's going to be a chance of this step to play or not. Then we have a note length. If I say, for example, I have a 1/8 which is playing, so I'm base 100% will represent 1/8, because the current step would be 1/8, and 0% would be no notes at all. And so we have basically here a third of the 8, and a bit more than half of the 8. Then we have a velocity, minimum and maximum value. Each note that will play will choose between these 2 values. And then we have as well modulations and pitch bend. So modulation, it's pretty simple. You have most of the CC available, the CC control, the continuous controllers of the MIDI standard, and you can choose whatever you want. Don't let the names fool you, because most of these, they don't have any sense apart from the MIDI specification. The only one that is really covered by most of the software is the mod wheel, because it really can correspond to the mod wheel of whatever keyboard you have. And to some extent the 11, which is expression, and this one is usually, but I say usually, it's not always the time, it's usually mapped to the aftertouch of any keyboard. So if you have an aftertouch modulator inside a given plugin, using this 11cc as a target for your modulation will probably have an impact on it. So, but it's up to you to select which one you want as soon as the target plugin is able to get MIDI CC information. So for now, I don't have any modulation. Same goes for the pitch bend. So the pitch bend allows you to transpose the notes while they are playing, for example. So we have the rest value, which correspond to the value to which the pitch bend will go back when no note is playing. The minimum value will be chosen, and minimum and maximum value will be chosen randomly for each note. So say that I'm just resting at this value. So each note that will play will choose a pitch bend, and the pitch bend value will go from this rest value to the chosen note. And the ramp time just tells how long it takes to go from rest value to the target value and back to the rest value when the note is over. So it's simpler to use than to explain, by the way. Just a word about the pitch bend. Some of the plugins and the synths that you're using, they have a minimum value for the pitch bend, so say 2 semitones up and 2 semitones down. Some don't. If you take, for example, Serum, it doesn't have a minimum value for the pitch bend, so you can use the pitch bend with the value of 0 to have a second modulation and assign the pitch bend to whatever plugin parameter you want. But it doesn't work in all the plugins. I've tested a bit of them, and some of them they have a minimum value, so you'll have to check on your plugin if it's possible or not, because you sometimes don't want to have any transposition. You want that to have another modulation instead of having pitch bend. So, but all in all, you have two of these modulations, one using the CC and one using the pitch bend. Next section we have is the note transposition section. The GridFather can be used to generate just more than repeating notes or simple arpeggiators. It's not memory for that. You can do simple notes, but its strength is that it allows you to choose inside a given scale, depending on the root note. The root note being the one you have in your MIDI incoming information. So, for example, here is an F, and starting from the F, which represent the root here, you can give a chance for each step sequence to play a given note instead of the root one. So if I say 0%, then all my notes will be exactly that F1. But if I say 50%, then half of the notes will play this F, but half of the note will play one of these, which are represented there with the given weights. The second parameter allows you to spread the notes upon several octaves. See, if it's 0, then the output notes will be between this F1 and the E2, which is 1 octave above. But if I say 1, then it's going to be from F1 to F3 or E3, etc., etc. So it's pretty simple. I think that many of you guys don't know all the bits and bytes on all the stuff regarding scales, because it can be a bit complicated. So I've done the same thing which I did in autoplay, so we can pretty much load a given scale. If you know the name of the scale, then you can just load it and have all the weights already set up for you. So if you say, for example, I want to do an arpeggio, basic arpeggio, so it would be 1 3 5. So okay, so we have the first value, then the minor third, and then the fifths, which basically for an F will be F, G sharp, yeah, G sharp, and C. So let's get back to major FreeGen, which is one of of those that I use the most. And then we're good. The latest section covers the channels probability. So you see that we have 8 numbers there. They correspond to the 8 MIDI channels which have been defined here. So if I say that this one is 100%, then it has many more chances that a note will be triggered there instead of the third channel, which is only 15, which corresponds to the channel 3. So we have many more notes on this one than on this one, for example. And finally, this is the trickiest to explain, is the phrase lengths. Initially, when I designed this software, each note would be sent to a different channel. So say that I'm doing like here 16ths and 18ths and 8ths, then each note will be spanned throughout all the channels. So it can be interesting, but somehow it's a bit messy. So this allows to force the software to change channel only when the given phrase is finished, is over. So here I'm one time, so these values are accurate. So it means that any given channel will play for 1/8 up to 1 second, and it's going to be chosen randomly each time a phrase ends. So I'll have several notes on the same channel before going to the next one. So it allows to something which have a bit more consistency in terms of the MIDI output. And it's of course configurable down to one note to get back to the initial value and having notes spread all over the 8 channels. All right, so you have to keep in mind that the setup of this has already been done. One thing that you shouldn't do and that you will face issue if you do that is having this channel and in record mode, because it will generate MIDI that will go out of the synth of the DAW, and it will come back on the DAW, and it will come back to the same channel, and it will screw out whatever notes you have put there. So you have something totally messy, and you don't want to do that. So whatever you do, avoid to have monitoring or input recording on this channel. It should only get one MIDI region and be deactivated in terms of recording. In Logic, you don't have a choice, unless I'm wrong. You don't have a choice. The selected track is always in monitoring, but if I select another one, then I'm okay. The other thing is that on the opposite, if I want all these channels to play, I need to have them set as records. So I need to press record, select all the channels and press record, so they all get this R information, which means that they are listening to incoming MIDI, and so whatever MIDI comes in the proper channel, it will play. So let's give it a try, and then we'll cover a bit the rest. So in the UE, we see that the software is giving us the information about what is playing, so what note length is currently playing, what velocity it is, and also what channel it is. And finally, the output MIDI note, which has been sent for the current sequence. And here we have the phrase length as well. Then let's reset it. Under OS X, Alt click will reset to the base value. Under Windows, it might be something like Shift click, but I'm not really sure, so we gotta give it a try. So there is no modulation right now. Let's see what it does when we record. Depending on the DAW, the display when recording can be different. So you'll see that under Logic, you have the impression that it doesn't record properly until you end the recording, but it's mainly because of how Logic works. But let's check it. And then boom, when the recording is over, the information are split per channel and sent to the corresponding tracks. So what do we have here? Interestingly, I've put different colors so we can see all the tracks at the same time. So I press E, then I see everything. It can happen that you have a note which is at the beginning, which is wrongly generated. It happens. I don't know if it's a bug because it depends really on the DAW you're in. So I can remove this one. But what we can do is check what has been sent. Let's just fold the notes. Oops. And then we have our 8 channels, which have a different color, and so we see that each time a note plays, it's the only one playing, and so that's the result really of the spread per channel. And we also see that we have several notes with the same color before the next one happens, and this is the result of the phrase generator, because I've asked the phrase to be minimum 1/4 here, so this is 1/4, and the maximum to be 1/2, and I think here we have 1/2. Yeah, I think that's 1/2. So this is what we have generated. I haven't put anything in the modulation, so we can maybe try it. So let's just remove that. Do something to the modulation. I don't know if the actual synths which I'm using rely on modulations, but that's not the purpose. So I'll say same that for the pitch bend. The modulation, I set a minimum, maximum value, and the rest value when nothing's happening. I put a bit of ramp time, and then boom, we can go do the same that we already did. Same again, so the notes, they are spanned throughout the channels, and if I open one of the sequences, I see that if I check the automation and MIDI information, so we have different velocities which correspond to the parameters here. We have channel 1, which is modulation, which has been recorded as well, and I don't think we have pitch bend. No, so I didn't put any pitch bend, but it would be the same for the pitch bend should I have recorded that. So we have controlled and we have recorded something which now is reproducible. So just for the sake of the demonstration, I'm going to remove this one and put this one which I generated a bit earlier. So it's, it's cherry picking, so you need to select the part which fits better for you. Now I can stop the GridFather, so it will not send anything, and I'm just playing what has been already recorded previously. Pretty interesting. All right, now let's mute all that. Just want to do a simple, another simple example, but now using a hardware synth. So I have my Virus here. So again, I'm going to activate the GridFather, and this time, this time I'll only select the first channel, which is the one which I've basically configured on the Virus. For those who know the Virus or have one, it can be set up as well on different tracks and having several instruments at the same time, because you have up to 8 or even 16 notes, 16 different timbres playing at the same time. The Virus, I haven't said that right now. Let's just listen to what it does with one single one single channel. So probably need to, I think it's, yeah, it's muted. So now the virus is receiving whatever is coming out of the GridFather because it's connected to my sound card as a MIDI device, and I think it's listening to the proper MIDI channel. So let's check that. No. Hey, I think it's. Yeah, it's probably on a different channel. I think maybe that's the third one. No. Nope. I need to put this one in monitoring mode. Sorry. Try another patch. So as you see, you can also control external instruments, and it works pretty much. And so I can record what's going out of the virus. Let's try that. Of course, this time it's going to be recorded as audio. And so I get an audio sequence which has been generated randomly, and that I can then use in my projects. As you know, does all these things relying on MIDI. They're very interesting because you can tweak them as long as you want, but at the end of the day, it's better to freeze them, bounce them, render in place whatever you want, just to help you progress and go forward in your project. Because if you don't do that, you can spend days and weeks just tweaking the values and never going further. So this is my personal advice, but I think I'm not the only one thinking that. So now I can play back what I've done, just this. At the beginning it's not very in sync because there was an ARP activated on the virus, so you can just remove the spot and just keep, I think, starting from there. It's getting better. If you have a look, it's pretty in sync. So latency is quite okay with regard to the virus, though it's connected using just input audio. So we have the latency for the output of the MIDI and the sound going back, so it's still pretty well. And there you go. I could do the same with the Summit. It's also listening to the same MIDI channel, I think. Not sure if I'm going to be able to do that. Let's just check Summit. It's working as well, so I can remove that now. This is not the virus which is playing; it's the Summit. but it's pretty much the same. No, yeah, but it doesn't receive the MIDI, I think, because I think that the Summit is listening on a different channel. Not even sure. No, it doesn't get. Sometimes you need to get some routing to get what you want out of it. So let's say, yeah. So the IC bus, let's get it out to the Summit instead of the Virus. So it will probably receive the message this time. Yeah. Excuse me. And samely, I can also record what's going on at Summit. There we go. We have a full audio region with what the Summit was playing. Of course, again, in a real project, I would probably get rid of all the FX and delays, which would be internal to the synth, except maybe for stabs or just ambient sounds, and add them later on, because now I just have them in and I can't just get rid of them should I want to. The interesting software I've been using here is a freeware which is called MIDI Patch Bay. It allows to route basically whatever you want from any MIDI input to any MIDI output, and filter the channels, even remap the incoming MIDI channels to another channel. You can filter the nuts or transpose them on the go. And it's a very nice software for OS X. I think you can do pretty much the same under Windows, though I'm less of an expert with regard to Windows. I know that Windows can be a bit of a pain sometimes with MIDI management, but it's up to you guys. I'll try maybe to search for any help. The thing is, this is really only for controlling external synths, because you sometimes don't have control about on which MIDI channel a given hardware synth is listening. So if you don't, then you need to make sure that wherever comes out of the GridFather, for example, channel 7 would be the Summit, then I would have to remap what's going on the channel 7 like that, on the channel 7, and remap it to the channel 1. So the GridFather would send out to the channel 7, but the information will go actually to channel 1 in the synth. So this way you're pretty much, it's quite flexible, you can do whatever you want. So that was it. I hope I've been clear enough. It's quite of a beast. Again, just for the sake of safety, of simplicity, if you just have one channel and you just want to play with one channel, all this is not necessary. You just have to, we can do that as a software instruments track. No, I don't want a drum kit. Let's say I'm gonna grab Anna 2. We're discussing about this one later. Thank you. Let's grab a bass. for example this one, and then I just put it in record, and as this will be sent, I just mute the synth. As the GridFather is sending only to the first channel, then it's gonna come back to Logic, which has no filter here, so it's gonna receive directly the notes. For some reason it doesn't get all the notes. Let's just switch the MIDI patch bay. Okay. Maybe something in the patch as well. I don't know if there's an ALP maybe. Yeah. Better. So if I'm doing bass, usually I just keep on the root note. So you just put everything down and just set up, one octave up. So we'll get basically F1 and F2, and that's it. So it's really simple. You just have the GridFather with the external instrument going to the ASC bus, and your instrument on another channel with no particular setting, and you're good to go. I can record that. Again, so we have all the stuff happening, the notes and the modulation, and we will have also the pitch bend if used, and that's it. Latest thing I wanted to tell you is that we can have several instruments listening to the same channel. For example, here if I take this one and I filter first channel only, and I unmute this one, let's get rid of the regions. So we have two instruments listening to the same channel, and so they will playing at the same time. So it can be on purpose that you want to layer two instruments at the same time. So it's pretty simple to do this like that. Or not. Yeah, for some reason I don't get the notes out of the second one. Oh yeah, because filtering in Logic, filtering just eats the notes, and so you can't get there. You can't get them wherever you want. So I would probably have to do another summing track. I think it's alright. So a stack track already, so I can create another, put them outside of the stack track, create a stack track out of them. Like that, and having this one, so this one would, let's give it a try. I'm not sure if it's gonna work, but if I do so and have this one listening to the to channel one, then they probably will get what I want. Yeah. So this sum number 2 is actually receiving the channel 1 information. And so everything which is low is gonna be playing. And if I record that, it's gonna be recorded on top. So we have all this stuff, and if I get rid of the GridFather, then I have my sum, and I can choose whatever I want, and by default all which is here will be playing inside the subtracks. Okay, and then I can play, and I can chop whatever I want, and keep what I want. Say I want this one, and split, and I can do it. I can do it as well, if that's my point. So this is not. I'm just generating a new grid sense out of these 2 tracks. Yeah, not the best sounds I could have chosen, but it was really for the sake of the demonstration. Alright, so that is it, the GridFather. I'm already at version 1.3 because I've added the CC modulation and pitch bend, which were not present in the first issue, and also the phrase length. It was not available, and so I had rather delayed a bit the release of the software than having something which is lacking some features which I consider pretty useful, and it would be needy anyway. So it's a bit of a long video because we're covering quite something which is not the simplest or the smallest plugin in the world. You gotta get some bit of information in terms of how to control and how to do routing in your DAW. Again, the manual should pretty much cover many of the DAWs that most of you are using. Of course, I'm not sure I'm covering all what exists. For example, I haven't tested it at all under Reason, and I think there are maybe some others DAWs that I don't even know of. And for example, I know I haven't tested against Presonus Studio as well, but you probably can figure out for yourself what it takes to use the GridFather if you want to do multiple channels. I think that for mono channels, if you're just using it as autoplay, it's pretty simple because you just need to route the GridFather to an external instrument connected to IAC bus or loop MIDI, depending on the macOS or Windows, and then having your instrument listen to what comes back from the loop. And it's pretty simple. It should work in pretty much any DAW. Multi-channel is something a bit more advanced for the DAWs, and not all of them provide these functions. Thank you for your attention, and feel free to leave me a message in the comments, and I'll post down a link to the software for those who are interested. And thank you again, and take care.